opportunity, but down into the bus stop, there is another one.
Pretty much just got used through.
Here goes BushiAntz around the outside of Pillon, up the inside into turn 13, around the outside for the Ferrari. They're so close, these two, but so respectful at the same time. BushiAntz goes around the outside for the second part now.
This is
for a podium.
Hey guys, my name is Anthony, and in today's F1 2020 tips video, I'm going to be giving you guys a guide on how to overtake and how to defend, mainly when you're racing online against other drivers. So if you're doing league races, or if you're just racing online in, say, the ranked matches, and you want to learn how to overtake and defend against cars more, because the overtaking and defending against the AI, it is pretty simple because the AI are coded to race the exact same way, so you'll eventually figure it out. However, the unpredictability of other drivers makes racing online a lot more fun, and if you can manage to overtake and defend against other drivers, it's a lot more fun to go through those type of battles. So if you want to see more videos similar to this, make sure to click the link at the top right hand side of the screen, because I have a bunch of F1 2020 tips on the channel already, like how to drive without assists, how to drive without traction control, and how to improve your race pace and other stuff like that. So first we're going to be talking about overtaking, and then we'll talk about defending after that. So the first thing you want to know when overtaking is you want to understand the track that you're driving, you want to understand the width of the track, you want to understand the corners, what type of corners that you can overtake at, and you also want to understand the width of the car. So for example, a track like Monza that is quite wide and has quite a lot of heavy braking zones, a lot of straights, a lot of slipstreamings going on, it's going to be a little bit more easier to overtake on a track like that than a track like Monaco, where you can barely get through the corners when you're going 2 cars wide. So you really want to understand what track you're driving at, where the overtaking opportunities are at, and how to utilize those opportunities with the width of your car, because it's easy to defend once you know how to place your car in the right positions. Then you have to learn how to overtake when someone is defending quite well. So in its basic form, there are 2 places on track to overtake, and that is the inside lane and the outside lane. When it comes to the inside lane, you're going to be closer to the apex. You're probably going to have to brake a little bit earlier, and you're not going to be carrying as much minimum speed into the corner because you're going to be closer to the apex. Whereas if you're on the outside, you're not going to be taking the optimum line through the corner. However, you can carry a lot more minimum speed through that corner, which means that it is still possible to defend and make moves on the outside. Now, as I said before, when it comes to racing against the AI, it's pretty simple to learn how they drive so that you can utilize that information to make overtaking opportunities. Like for example, on the first corner on the first lap, usually if you're starting at last, you could probably dive down the inside of the AI and make up like 10 positions and you're already in the points. However, the unpredictability of driving against people online and what they're going to do makes racing fun, and that's why a lot more people are getting into league racing. So when it comes to league racing, the best places that you really want to overtake people on are on the straights and into heavy braking zones. Just like real life, on the straights is going to be the easiest opportunity because obviously you're both on the straight, and if you're going faster than the person ahead of you, whether it's from the slipstream, whether it's from DRS, or maybe you just got a better exit out of the corner before the straight, you can just make a move on the inside or a move on the outside and pass them on the straights. Or you can also pass them into heavy braking zones, because being later on the brakes is what makes up a lot of time, and if you can brake just 5-10 meters after the person ahead of you, then it can really make the difference going into that next corner. When it comes to overtaking on the straight, it really depends on the straight itself and how long that straight is. One straight that really comes to mind when it comes to not being that long, so even though it's a straight with a DRS zone, it's still hard to really overtake on it, is the second DRS zone, I believe, on Catalonia, the one where you're just coming off of turn 9, I believe, and you go down that straight. It's still quite hard to overtake the car ahead of you because of the fact that the straight isn't really that long. So even with slipstream, even with DRS, and considering the fact that you're throwing the car into the previous corner, potentially even flat out, it is very difficult to overtake on straights like that. You really need the person ahead of you to either make a mistake or just not really get that momentum going through turn 9 to make the overtake happen on that straight. Whereas straights like the back straight at China, it is pretty much a 1 kilometer straight, so if you can get a better exit off of that last corner before that straight, then most chances are you're going to overtake the car ahead of you because of slipstream and the eventual DRS zone, which are the main ways to overtake on straights: getting a better exit, DRS and slipstream. And the best way to overtake going into a corner is simply just to brake later than your opponent. The most time on track is made on the brakes, so if you have a better braking technique, if you're better at trail braking and managing your brakes going into a corner than the person ahead of you, then you're going to be able to make the overtake stick through your braking. So lastly, we're going to be talking about the type of overtakes that there are. So you guys obviously know about the outside overtakes and the inside overtakes. However, there are overtakes like switchbacks, where you start on the outside, brake as late as you can, try and bait the opponent into a mistake, and then when they shoot off of the corner, you switch back on the inside and get a better exit and get the move done. And there are also overtakes that doesn't necessarily happen on track, but happen based on strategy, and those are undercuts and overcuts, which are very important in a lot of league races, because usually when you're league racing against other drivers, those other drivers are on the same level as you, which is what makes the racing a lot better and more exciting. And a lot of the time it comes down to the strategy. Do you undercut your opponent? Do you try and overcut your opponent? It really just depends on the situation. But those type of overtakes that happen based on strategy and pit strategies are some of the more common overtakes that you'll see people making during a race. So lastly, we're going to be talking about the person on the other half of the battle, which is the defender. And when it comes to defending, the number one thing you really need to understand when it comes to that is the exact same thing as the number one thing you need to understand when overtaking, which is understanding the width of the track, understanding the width of the car, and more importantly, understanding where to place your car on track so that the person behind you can't overtake you and they end up getting frustrated and potentially even making a mistake. The next thing you need to understand is something that's a bit more high level when it comes to league racing, and that's understanding when you should defend and when you shouldn't defend, because there are times when you probably shouldn't defend because it's actually going to benefit you a lot more. So for example, I had a race recently at Spa for my league race in WOR. And the guy behind me in the Ferrari, he was ready to overtake me, and instead of defending the position, I realized that he's actually quicker than me, and I wanted to try and get within the DRS of the two drivers ahead of me. So I let him pass and then let him drag me along throughout the lap with DRS, and I ended up managing to catch up to the two guys ahead, and then we could have a four-way battle for the win. However, if I had defended the position from the Ferrari, not only would we have lost time because I didn't feel as quick as him on track at the time, but we will also have lost time to the guys ahead who weren't battling and were just trying to manage their DRS and manage their fuel as best as they can. So when it comes to understanding when you shouldn't and should defend, it really comes down to experience. You need to get yourself out there racing against other people and see some of the typical things that they tend to do, because a lot of the time it can actually be better to let the guy behind you ahead of you, especially if he's maybe quicker on track, and then you can follow him, you can save ERS, you can save fuel, and then make the definitive overtake later on in the race. When it comes to say lap 12 or lap 13 during a 50% race, there's no real reason to defend if the person is quicker than you and you have the opportunity to catch up to people who are maybe stuck in a DRS train ahead. But at the same time, there are situations where you do want to defend. For example, maybe if you're going into the pits and you're on an in lap, you want to defend against the person behind you because maybe you just want to be in the pits first. Or obviously when it comes to the final lap and you're fighting for the win or you're fighting for points, you're going to want to defend your position and be as high up in the grid as possible to gain as many points as possible. So it really comes down to experience. So as we mentioned before, there are two places on track that you can overtake, and that is the inside line and the outside line. However, when it comes to defending, it is possible to defend on the outside, of course. However, you want to prioritize the inside line, because if you can place your car towards the inside of the track in a certain position, it's going to make the person trying to overtake on the outside very frustrated because it's going to be very difficult to overtake them. So you really want to prioritize the inside line when it comes to defending over the outside line. Okay, so that's going to be it for today's video. If you enjoyed it and you learned from it, make sure to hit the like button and stick around by subscribing to the channel, because it lets me know that you guys are enjoying this type of content, and I want to make some more F1 2020 tip videos for you guys in the near future, because some of these videos are actually just as much for me as they are for you, as I'm trying to improve at the game as much as I can as well. So also, if you want to, make sure to follow me on Twitter and join my Discord server. I have a spreadsheet of baseline setups that you guys can use throughout your league races, and the only way to access them right now is by joining my Discord. So those links will be in the description below, and I'll see you guys in my next video.